Traffic Conversations podcast. Welcome back to Traffic Conversations podcast. Today we're going to be checking out a book that I've been reading called Dismantling America by Thomas Sowell. I got turned on to Thomas Sowell about 4 years ago, and I could not believe that someone of this caliber existed. I can only say that popular media has done a very good job at hiding him. So I decided to get a bunch of his books and start reading them because there's a lot of his content on YouTube. You can visit YouTube, search for Thomas Sowell. You'll find a bunch of his interviews, both recent interviews and interviews as far back as the early 80s. There are even some videos of him at a Senate hearing, and it's fascinating how he's able to concisely explain economic principles and economic consequences in such a way that it will take you being intentional to not understand what he's trying to explain. So without further ado, we're going to be listening to one of the chapters in this book, Dismantling America. The link to the book will be in the show notes. I would like you to consider getting this book for yourself. There's so much in this book that would surprise you, and it will reveal a lot about how political decisions are made and about how economics are run in the world as we know it. So let's dive into the chapter. Now, this chapter is titled "Are We France?" and it's really interesting to see to hear a few of the thoughts that he has in this chapter. Let's go for it.
One of the painful consequences of studying history is that it makes you realize how long people have been doing the same foolish things with the same disastrous results. Crowds cheer when Barack Obama declares dramatically that he is going to bring down the cost of health care, as if price controls were some bright new idea. There were price controls back in Roman times and in ancient Babylon before that. Price controls have had the same bad effects for literally thousands of years, but now they are suddenly the latest new formula for salvation. International negotiations are likewise the latest new alternative to the use of force. This clever notion has also been tried out before, and with even more disastrous results. World War II.
I'm going to be pausing, and I want you to see how certain things have been tried before. They failed in the past, and it's almost like when they are reintroduced in present day politics, it's as if these things have never been tried before, or the people who tried them in the past were not smart enough to pull it off. So we're the ones who are going to be able to make this work. So let's make the same decisions that empires or governments in the past made, which ruined their countries. It's fascinating listening to him outline some of these facts.
II, with tens of millions of people killed, was the result of that clever notion. After the unprecedented carnage and destruction of the First World War, people could be forgiven for being willing to try anything in hopes of avoiding a repetition. France was especially hard hit. More Frenchmen were killed in that war than all the Americans ever killed in all our wars put together. So it is understandable that French Foreign Minister Aristide Briand was one of the architects of the 1928 International Treaty renouncing war, as if renouncing force will do anything other than make you a sitting duck for countries that do not renounce force.
So now, it's frustrating for people like me, okay? People like me. And when I say people like me, I don't mean people who look like me, like who have the same skin color, but people who think like me. Look at the kind of decisions that are being made on the world stage, and it's obvious that these decisions will have disastrous consequences. Let's say you have a bully whose aim it is to overpower people who are weaker than them. And then you have someone else who is strong enough to withstand the bully. And then that person says to himself, or is convinced, that all he has to do is lay down his arms, be nice, and the bully will suddenly change their mind. Now, I am a person of faith. I subscribe to the teachings of Jesus. World politics or politics and leading a country abides by certain rules. If you're leading a country, there are certain things that you have to put in place to protect the citizens of your country. Having a standing army is one. Having the equipment to defend your borders is another. Having a strong economy is another. Okay? You can't subscribe or ascribe the principles that an individual should live by, okay, to a nation. The nation has its own personality. It has its principles for sustaining a working society. And all of those principles are operated in a different way from how an individual of faith is meant to operate. So when I talk about this, and people who watch this who know that I am a person of faith may hear this and think that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. On one side, I talk to individuals and I ask them to not engage in acts of violence or withstand the wicked. But on the other side, I'm talking to nations and saying, look, if another country threatens your citizens, you have to respond with force. These are two separate contexts, and they should not be conflated or mixed up. So I just want to get that out of the way, because I'm going to be saying some things in response to a few things that Thomas Sowell is going to be saying moving forward. And I just want to lay that as a background. Now, the world has been preaching disarmament. They've been preaching lay down your arms. They've been preaching, be nice to these guys whose founding document states that they want to eradicate a certain group of nations who subscribe to certain way of life or a certain belief system. And then the response on the international scene is to say, well, let's all lay down our arms and be peaceful and everything will be okay. Well, as we're about to hear, that has been tried before.
The Kellogg-Briand Pact was just one of the many disarmament treaties and non-aggression pacts that sprang up like mushrooms throughout the 1920s and 1930s. Nothing is easier than to disarm peaceful people, whether domestically or internationally. But the aggressor nations paid no attention to the agreements they had signed. For example, one of the consequences of international naval agreements limiting the size of battleships was that Germany and Japan began the Second World War with bigger battleships than either the British or American navies. We can be charitable toward those who had suffered so much in the First World War that they hoped against hope to avoid going through that again. But now we know that utopian, feel-good policies led to even worse horrors in the Second World War. So we have...
All right, so after the First World War, everyone said, let's all lay down our arms and aim for peace. The country that was defeated and humiliated in the First World War eventually decided to rearm, and they built bigger ships than the Allied forces. The Allied forces started with a depleted military, a demoralized army, and they faced an a nation that was motivated and had been preparing for war for years. So they were way ahead of the Allied forces in that regard.
Have no excuse in our own time, not with nuclear terrorism as a danger looming ahead for ourselves and for generations yet to come. Even more dangerous than the physical disarmament on which so many pinned their hopes after the First World War was the moral disarmament that took place, especially in France. History books depicting the heroic French soldiers who had given their lives defending their country against the German invaders were attacked by the French Teachers' Union as bellicose books that had to be removed from the schools. Publishers were forced to change their textbooks to reflect the pacifism pervading the teachers' unions as
Hold on. I'm sorry for interrupting this. This happened in the 1920s, leading up to the 1930s, when Nazi Germany started their campaign across Europe. Teachers' unions attacked the French soldiers by, first of all, rewriting history, attacking textbooks that depicted the French soldiers as heroes, and attacking them, making them look like they were the villains or the victims, or give them a victim shroud that made them look weak and pathetic for defending their country. Teachers' unions. Does that sound familiar to what's going on today in the United States? Teachers' unions are championing some of the most outlandish educational policies in this in this century. It's amazing how history tends to repeat itself.
as well as other parts of French society. Patriotism was out, internationalism was in.
Patriotism is under attack. If you subscribe to a nationalist position as a part of a country, especially if you're a citizen of a country that historically has been empowered, has empowered its citizens, where the citizens live in freedom, where the citizens live in relative prosperity when compared with other parts of the world. Okay? That sense of patriotism and that national pride is being attacked by who? The teachers' unions, the academia.
In the name of world peace. Where previous history books had depicted the epic story of the French soldiers stopping the German invaders at Verdun, despite massive casualties and terrible conditions, all new textbooks depicted Verdun as a scene of horror for all soldiers. Imagine the suffering of these combatants, French, allies, or enemies, the revisionist history said. French military heroes were reduced to the status of victims, and no better than other victims among the invaders. A whole generation of Frenchmen raised in the spirit of moral disarmament faced a new German invasion in 1940. France, which had held out for 4 long years in the First World War, collapsed and surrendered after just 6 weeks of fighting in 1940. It is something to think about the next time someone talks about honoring the troops, when what they are really doing is depicting the troops as victims and the country they are fighting for as no better than any other.
All right, so that's the end of this chapter, and I'm just going to leave some thoughts and ask you to please leave your comments. I know that this is quite eye-broken at some point, and maybe the entirety of the message, feels disjointed. But I hope you followed. And the reason why I'm doing these book reviews, I'm starting to include book reviews as part of the content, is that I see our conversations as requiring some depth, some intellectual rigor, as well as heart, as well as passion, as well as a sense of moral depth, if you will, and including some of the books that I've been reading seems to be a great way to go. Now, the last part of this chapter states how the troops who were famous for holding out and withstanding the German attacks for years during the First World War only fell after only a couple of weeks. And this happened due to the efforts, the fantastic, brave efforts of the academia, who basically demoralized the entire country by their rhetoric, by revising history and depicting anyone who defended their country as a victim of a delusional idea. It's amazing how history repeats itself. Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. I heard this chapter. This is not my first time of hearing this chapter. In fact, I'm way ahead. I've gone through other chapters, and I picked out a few of these chapters to kind of include in our content, to put it out there. See what you think. See if this is something that kind of stirs you up and makes you want to dig deeper and discover more about history, about things that we can avoid, about what seems to be happening now but may have been done in the past, and the kind of results those actions produced in the past. Simply doing something at a different time does not guarantee a more improved result. Many times, if you do the same thing over and over again, you will get the same result. I remember a saying, and I'm sure you've heard it too, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. And our leaders are doing the same thing that generated a certain type of result, and they claim that it is going to magically create new outcomes. In the 1920s, the pacifist disarmament of law-abiding countries who just wanted the best for the world and the best for their society, the best for their children. Okay, these societies were encouraged to disarm, while countries who didn't have those ideals armed up and were responsible for the death of millions upon millions of people. Think about that. Today, there is a push for disarmament, and everyone is being told that it's going to prevent crime, it's going to prevent gun violence, it's going to prevent all sorts of things. How true do you think that is? Let me know in the comments section. Send in your voice notes. The link is in the show notes. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this format makes sense. I am trying this out, aiming to help you see a few of the things that I'm researching and reading on, and bring you along with me on my journey, discovering new ways of thinking and new ways of presenting facts, because we are talking about facts, not feelings, facts, not assumptions, facts, not something that we assume will work simply because in our heads we think that is the way the world works. No, there is a way the world works. It has shown to work that way for millennia, And because of human nature, it will continue to work that way for millennia to come, all things being equal. So let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there are other books that you would like me to review in the future. I would like to include those later. I'm going to be bringing in more chapters from Thomas Sowell books. I have a few more chapters from this book that I'm going to be reviewing in the episodes to come. I'm going to be spreading it out, so it's not going to be sequential, but let me know if this makes sense. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this content. If you're listening on Spotify or any other podcasting platform, don't forget to subscribe so that you'll be notified when new episodes are released. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and share, okay, and like the video. Okay, let the algorithm let the algorithm know that this video is valuable to you and might be valuable to someone else. Thank you so much for sticking around for so long. I do appreciate you spending your time watching this content, and I look forward to our time together next time. So until the next time we dive into a fresh piece of content, God bless you and goodbye.